That's besides being, of course, a curator at the State Museum in Juneau, he's done a lot of research in different areas, and Tlingit armor. He's going to give a paper on William Paul, clan leader and culture bearer. But if you look through the program, he has taken the first place in the number of papers presented. I only gave 2, but Steve has 5, 6, 4. Anyway, but seriously speaking, Steve has been real hard worker for all the 3 clan conferences, 07, 09, and this one. So we owe him a really big gunal chish. So I'd like to thank Steve personally, and on behalf of our committee, planning committee. He doesn't stand in the limelight, but we were told yesterday a real Tlingit doesn't have to stand in the limelight. So he's a real Tlingit and adopted into the Kilauea clan too.
Well, thank you, Sergey. I was lucky last year to get to spend a couple of weeks in Seattle working with the William Paul papers at the University of Washington, and it's the first time. Oh, is the screen going? Yeah. Okay. Is that?
Oh, you saw it. Sure. Yeah. Okay, we'll just connect. That's it.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that. The collection, the William Paul collection at the University of Washington is especially rich, and it's also one of the physically densest collections that I've ever gone through, because each box of the collection, when they bring it out to you, it weighs as if there were 2 boxes there, and the reason is because he made a lot of carbon copies of everything, and so the density of it is about 2 or 3 times what a regular archival box would be, and it's also somewhat difficult because a lot of the paper is very thin and it sticks together. So it is challenging to work with, but very worth the effort, and so I encourage everyone to take a look at that collection if they ever get the opportunity. I'd also like to thank Francis Paul, D. Germain, and Ben Paul for helping me with the research, and I was able to set up a meeting with Francis while I was down there, and knowing about William Paul's writings and having gone through some of them, I knew that he really had an aversion to the use of the word clan. And was in his papers, almost every letter he wrote, he was telling people why they should not use the term clan to refer to a clan. They should be called a tribe because it was a basic unit of government. A clan is merely a group of related people, but a tribe is actually a better term for a clan. And so he advocated that constantly through his life. And I told myself, do not use the word clan, do not use the word clan when meeting his daughter, and sure enough, within about 5 minutes of getting there, I accidentally used the word clan. And so I was then, it was as if Francis was channeling William Paul. It was exactly what he had written so many times, so I felt kind of honored, actually. But anyway, my topic today is William Paul's background in traditional culture, and we don't really think of William Paul as a traditionalist, but he was a clan leader for the Tehitan clan, and his writings reveal that he had a very acute knowledge of Tlingit culture. So I wanted to focus on that for the presentation today. Known for his passionate and fiery leadership in legal and political arenas, William Paul was leader and spokesman for the Tehitan clan tribe of Wrangell. His writings, preserved at the University of Washington, reveal his deep interest and knowledge of traditional Tlingit culture. Paul and other Tlingit leaders of his generation, educated in missionary and boarding schools and with a limited fluency in the Tlingit language, faced great challenges in learning their culture at a time when its perpetuation was under attack. On a foundation provided by his uncles and other clan elders, Paul built his knowledge based on decades of conversations with elders and clan leaders, as well as a close reading of the published anthropological sources. His deep understanding of the culture informed both his leadership of the Alaska Native Brotherhood and his legal work, including his famous case before the U.S. Supreme Court. Focusing on William Paul's understanding of the traditional structure of clan leadership, this presentation reviews his writings on the subject and examines how he put his understanding into practice among his own people, the Tehatan. William Paul, born in 1885, was truly a force of nature. He was a seminal figure in the Alaska Native Civil Rights Movement. In 1920, Paul became the first Native admitted to practice law in Alaska, and for the next 2 decades became one of the most important leaders of the Alaska Native Brotherhood. Paul was also the first Alaska Native elected to the Territorial House of Representatives, where he served 2 terms. As Steve Haycox has written in his excellent biography of William Paul in Hakushti'i, with the help of his brother Lewis, he molded the A&B into a potent political and social force, a focal point for Alaska Native concerns and interests in an effective body, advocating and securing recognition of Alaska Native equality and rights. That's a quote from Steve Haycox. Through the A&B, the Paul brothers helped achieve Native voting rights, successfully arguing against rules that prohibited Natives from voting unless they proved to be leading a civilized life. In the 1930s, they organized the Native vote to counter, among other things, the ruinous commercial exploitation of salmon by powerful commercial interests. William Paul helped initiate the land claim suit against the federal government and fought for the rights of clans to enter into the suit in a case settled by the U.S. Supreme Court, the Tehatan versus U.S., 1959. While it proved unsuccessful, it set the strategic stage for future claims pursued by independent tribes banding together. His prototype for developing the strategy was actually comes out of Tlingit tradition. It was the Stikine Federation, a defensive alliance of rival clans, he would say tribes, in Wrangell. Paul remained an important and respected Native leader through the post-war period and in the land claim struggle in Alaska, and ended his life widely honored and revered, a modern tribal elder among his people, and a major figure in modern Alaska history, so writes Steve Haycox. Though he's not remembered as a traditionalist or a ceremonial leader, his writings, many of which are unpublished, reveal that Paul had considerable familiarity with traditional Tlingit culture. He was born in 1885 to a Duckloidy man of Tongass and to his mother of the Tehatan Raven clan of Wrangell. They were both highly acculturated missionary teachers. Tilly Paul grew up when traditional rules applied and was very knowledgeable in Tlingit custom. Though assimilated, she made sure that William knew Tehatan clan lifeways and history, either through direct lessons or through providing experiences for William with his relatives. Mrs. Paul commented on the redeeming and positive qualities of traditional Tlingit culture. Quote, there was no disrespect for elders in the old custom. If you teach us to ridicule and to look down on all that our fathers reverenced, then you teach us to show disreverence to our fathers. How can I teach the loving fatherhood of God, the blessed sonship of man, and with the same word preach a disrespect for all our human fathers meant to us? According to William Paul, after his father died, his mother sent him to family relatives on both sides of the family who retained many elements of traditional subsistence life. At age 4, he was sent to Ketchikan to spend the summer with an uncle, George Paul. In 1894, he went with his mother to Wrangell and was introduced to his fellow clan members and members of his father's people. Staying in Wrangell, learning from clan relatives until 1899, when he was sent to boarding school at Carlisle, he returned to his uncle Yakuk in 1904 and hunted, fished, and trapped with him and carried out other subsistence activities in the Wrangell area, working with clan members during his summers home from college, 1905 to 08. So he did spend a considerable amount of time working with fellow Klan members, mostly elders and uncles, where he picked up a lot of his traditional knowledge. Though he remained outside of Alaska between 1908 and 1920, when he returned, he retained his knowledge of and appreciation for Tlingit tradition. As he joined his brother Lewis in the leadership of the ANB, he felt a strong desire to reverse the ANB's constitutional precept that against the old customs. He wrote, quote, "I set about to remove the impediment, namely the Constitution of the Alaska Native Brotherhood, which was interpreted to be strongly against old custom, a theme of all the uplift zealots so successful that some of our Indian communities even burned their totem poles. So I got the ANB to amend its constitution by adding the following: to oppose, to discourage, and to overcome the narrow injustice of race, to commemorate the fine qualities of native races of North America, and to preserve their history, lore, art, and virtues, to cultivate the morality, education, commerce, and civil government of Alaska, and to create a true respect for the Constitution of the United States." Thus, in spite of his education in assimilist missionary schools, he helped to reverse what he felt was an extreme overreaction that was ultimately harmful to his people that had existed prior in the ANB Constitution. He had developed a foundational understanding of Tlingit lifeways and oral traditions through his family and clan. His lineage, his social standing among the Tihitan placed him in line to be clan leader by helping to change the ANB's philosophy to be more positive towards old customs. He was exercising an important duty of a clan leader to, in the words of Father Kaminsky, quote, "the chiefs are the major adherents to and defenders of the ancient customs and laws," unquote. In traditional times, from a young age, Tlingit children of the nobility were groomed to become leaders. They were schooled in the manners and language of the aristocracy, in the conduct of foreign relations, and in the protocol of traditional ceremonies that they would one day be expected to lead. By Paul's time, this training was truncated or non-existent in some parts of southeast Alaska. Yet the clan still needed leaders and sought out the most able individuals who were in line. With Paul's formal education in law, it's natural that he would become expert in Tlingit law, while other aspects of the culture, particularly the spiritual side and ceremonial protocol, remained more foreign to him. Around 1942, Paul assumed the role of a leader in the Tihitan clan and custodian of the Leader of All Ravens hat. According to him, he was formally introduced into that position by Julia Kudesh Kuhat, a Nakla of his clan. His ascendance to the role took place in a setting foreign to the culture, but somehow appropriate given that Paul had gathered the clan members together in the Wrangell courthouse for a hearing of Tihitan versus U.S. Paul recounted that while the ceremony, quote, was not understood by the U.S. attorney present at the time, but that the meeting marked the passing of one chief and the elevation of another. Yodat, that was the woman who introduced him as the new leader, was described by Paul as a sort of mother of Israel. She was a powerful force in the clan who helped install William Paul's predecessor, a man named Gush, who replaced his uncle in the position of leader around 1882. There's no evidence that Paul ever potlatched his new position or was very active in traditional ceremonies. Potlatches and other ceremonies were rare in Wrangell and other parts of the southern panhandle by then. Overall, as his activities in politics and law wound down over the years, he was driven to learn as much as he could from his elders through the study of traditional culture. He became a student of the Tlingit language, quote, "which I could not learn when I was a boy, for we were told if we learned Tlingit, we could not learn English. So I began to study the books available. I found very little written in the Tlingit language." He learned clan history and Tlingit custom by consulting his elders. Quote, "I wanted to know the history of my tribe, so I asked anyone who had information. everybody that knew anything of the older group of the Tehatan, unquote. A frequent traveler to Tlingit villages while on A&B business, Paul had the unique advantage of interacting with leaders from all across Tlingit country. Dr. B.K. Wilbur, a physician associated with the Sitka Industrial School, described Paul's approach to his work and the level of trust that he and his mother held. Quote, he has been a leader of the Tlingit people for years. They consult him, trust him, and follow his advice. He has fought against their exploitation by the large canning companies and unscrupulous white men and for their rights. In my opinion, very few people today are in the position to gather the folklore of these remarkable natives and to record it in an interesting and authoritative way. Of these few, I am confident Mr. Paul is the best qualified to do this. And through her wide acquaintance in Southeast Alaska, especially with the older people, Mr. Paul's mother will be of great help in this work. She as well as her son will become welcome to every Tlingit home, and the people will talk with them freely, unquote. So he was a collaborator in this effort with his mom. He took copious notes on clan history, personal names, and the Tlingit language. Unfortunately, many decades of his work was lost in 1939 when a fire consumed the Goldstein apartments. He began again, and his papers at the University of Washington and in the possession of his daughter, Frances, reveal his deep interest in genealogy, Tlingit names, language, place names, artifacts, and oral history. The depth of his knowledge is also revealed in letters to his family and government officials, and also in court documents. He was never afraid to challenge anthropologists and other writers who published what he considered to be inaccuracies. Over the decades of accumulating this information, he produced a manuscript of his own on the culture that he hoped one day would be published. Quote, I have written a manuscript that has not been published, I think about 100,000 words, in which I have titled the manuscript, Where Did They Come From? I have also written a number of articles on the traditions, stories, and interpretations of totem poles, unquote. His manuscript, edited by Francis Paul D. Germain, was recently published, and I noticed that there were some copies available here. I'm not sure if there still are, but it's definitely worth picking up, representing a lifetime of study. Paul had an appreciation for the artistry exhibited in Clan At'u, and he felt that the Tlingit sense of design and workmanship should be preserved, especially the handful of pieces that remained in Alaska. He and the Alaska Native Brotherhood encouraged clans to place their artifacts on loan to fireproof museums. Following the Hoonah fire in 1944, which destroyed many clan houses and artifacts in that community, the Alaska Native Brotherhood and Sisterhood passed a resolution to prevent further losses by encouraging clans to place their At'u in their local museums. In the early 1950s, the need for safe storage was further underscored when a major section of downtown Wrangell was burned, causing a loss of artifacts, including a large war canoe belonging to the Nanya Ai. Let me skip ahead a little bit. Okay. Paul's actions as Tehatan clan leader was likely influenced by his early encounters with old-school Tlingit leaders in Wrangell, also by his interaction with other clan leaders around Southeast and his consultation of anthropological writings about the Tlingit by non-native explorers and anthropologists like Emmons, Swanton, Boas, Oberg, Drucker, and De Laguna. He may not have been among the first. He may have been among the first, but was certainly not the last clan leader to train themselves in the arts of leadership through these kinds of diverse sources. Many historical and anthropological sources are contradictory. They state that the authority of clan leaders is limited, but their duties require them to hold significant authority to act on behalf of the clan. It is likely that in many circumstances, leaders could not dictate orders to clan members, as the members could opt out if they did not want to participate. The limits of clan leaders' power are often emphasized today, to the point that some suggest that no important decision could be made without a vote of all clan members. The group delegates many important activities to their leaders and respect, trust, and support them to take action on their behalf. The leader is the chief diplomat, trader, and administrator of clan business, and their power varies depending on their aristocratic status, personality, determination, and leadership qualities. So I'll skip ahead to the conclusion here. I'm sorry I've run out of time, but his papers at the University of Washington contain a great deal of information on clan leadership practices, and I think it's definitely worthwhile accumulating those as I have started to, and I hope to publish these at some point. Taken together, historical sources of information coupled with William Paul's detailed accounts of clan administration offer a logical model of decision-making among Tlingit clans. Clan and house leaders had limited authority because they would lose the respect of clan members if they made bad decisions. To make the best decision possible, leaders met with councils of house leaders or elders and close family members to discuss issues and make decisions. The decision was announced to clan members at large, and they were free to speak on the matter, but according to Emmons, the sentiment of the majority was followed, but generally the prior decision of the house heads was accepted. And he wrote, quote, an act of one is accepted by all. Most certainly, William Paul does not fit the mold of a traditional Tlingit or a typical 20th century Tlingit clan leader, yet aspects of his quest to learn the culture and struggle to exercise good leadership for his people in a modern world would seem familiar to those who take on that challenging role today. While we might not always agree with his decisions or motivations, we can accept, I think, the sincerity of his efforts to preserve the relevance of Tlingit traditions in modern times and his support of their evolution in response to changing conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I'd say we should have a break of 20 minutes rather than half an hour. That way, so 10 to 11 we'll reconvene, and we'll have time for Kim Metcalf's paper, then Steve Haycock's comments, which are fairly extensive, I understand, and then open the floor to questions and comments. And I think that would be really important. And I think the one thing that I'm kind of missing so far, we don't have a lot of comments from the audience in these sessions, or not enough. So we're hoping for some this late morning session after a break, 20-minute break.